Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurial Musician, a newsletter, coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. Today's episode is titled, Will This Be on the Test? Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right. Going to keep this one relatively short this week. Will this be on the test? We have been trained from literally as early as any of us can remember to say those 6 words when we are in any learning situation. Will this be on the test? In fact, if I had $1 for every time a college student asked me that question, I could probably take a very nice European vacation and I could bring my extended family along with me. At least it feels that way. And I want to be clear, I don't blame them. We have been taught that good grades will get you into a good college, and that going to a good college or university is going to get you a good job, and that a good job gets you paid well, and then you live happily ever after. So in their defense, the way to excel within that system is to focus on what's going to be on the test and not what's not going to be on the test. And you need to ask what will be on the test to know what it is you actually have to focus on. These are hard words to unlearn, but unlearn these 6 words we must, because the real world doesn't work that way. Here are some examples. Freelancing. It is the soft skills that make a freelance career truly successful. Sure, you have to be able to play, and sure, you have to be able to sight read, but your networking skills, your work under pressure, how you work with others. I always say that 98% of the music business makes it pretty easy to be kind to them, like 95% of the time. And, you know, everybody has a day here and there where they're just not in a great mood and maybe putting off some weird vibes. But there are like 2% of the business that makes it hard with at least some regularity to be kind to them. And our entire reputation is based on how we interact with that 2% of the business. And I'm not talking about people who have an issue with your gender or with your sexual orientation, like no like real life stuff, just somebody who's just a pain in the ass. That's it. And is like an equal opportunity pain in the ass. Our entire reputation is based on how we interact with those people. So it's the soft skills that make great freelancers, great freelancers. Private teachers. Getting parents to trust you is the hard part of being a private teacher. It's not being able to teach kids how to sight read. By the way, if you're teaching them to look at the key signature first, you are doing it wrong, but I've said too much. I'll just say this. What's worse, getting lost or playing an A flat accidentally in the key of B flat major? Getting lost, the roadmap is what you should always look for first. But I digress. Academia, even classes in college that teach you how to get chosen for an established job, like teaching college, tend to focus on things like how to format a resume or what constitutes a good headshot, which is all stuff you can learn via Google in under 5 minutes. And those are important, but truly standing out in your interview is harder. And even just getting the interview in the first place is like doing interesting things with yourself before you get chosen. Those are the hard things. Being a composer. Music theory is vital, but actually developing a creative voice to your writing and then learning how to get your music in front of the right people is much harder than the music theory. I'm not trying to minimize how much work it is to become great, like to have a full harness on the music theory of whichever corner of the music, of music that you are, songwriting in or composing in. But that's not the hard part. Producer or recording engineer, knowing how to use the software and hardware necessary to do those jobs is obviously important, just like music theory is, and knowing the rules and knowing when you're breaking them is to a composer, right? The hard part is having an opinion as a producer, or getting hired because people need the specific sound that they know you and no one else will capture for them as a recording engineer. Put another way, there are more freelancers who play well enough to make a living than freelancers who can do that, but also truly crush the human side of being a freelancer. There are way more people who are capable of teaching a young clarinetist how to play above the break than there are private teachers who truly gain the trust of the parents of the students who end up signing up for them. There are way more people in academia who are able to check all of the obvious boxes. Boy, did I learn this firsthand. I was on a search committee at Shenandoah Conservatory. I was stunned at how many qualified people. We got over 80 applicants for one job. And I won't get into like the details of what the job was, anything like that, but it was incredible. I mean, of those, it was almost 100 people that applied, and of those, there was maybe 5 that on paper weren't qualified, like weren't imminently qualified, which means like, okay, so what else, right? And so, yeah, the hard part is there were a whole lot of those people who hadn't done anything interesting, though. At least they didn't show us that in terms of their material. It was just went to a good school, went to a good graduate school, went to a good, a school for a doctorate, and had 2 or 3 good letters of recommendation from people saying that they were, good at the job we were doing. But so did 80 other people. And so that's not the hard part there, right? There are a lot more composers who understand music theory and are able to who have mastered voice leading than composers who have mastered voice leading and also have a true voice, which you develop, by the way, by writing a whole bunch of music that doesn't sound like really anybody. It sounds like other people. It's bad. You imitate until you can innovate, right? Getting to the innovate part, that's the hard part. And so this is not just semantics, by the way. We have to choose how we devote our precious attention, the most valuable commodity any of us have to give, right? Which, I'm going to say in about like 5 minutes here. We have to choose how we devote our precious attention and resources. And anytime we focus on what's going to be on the test, we aren't focusing on what is truly going to move the needle for us. So remember that these 6 words lurk deep inside of all of us, even those of us who haven't been in school in a couple of decades, cough, cough. And remember that it's worth unlearning, even though it is hard to do. Okay, this week's quote is from Gloria Steinem, and this is about unlearning. The first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn. Learning for me usually goes something like this. I acquire new information. I then, when I decide that that is something that I need to integrate, I then have to work on unlearning the old information, which is no longer relevant to me, but can't just be dismissed instantly. At least if this new information is really going to move the needle for me. I'm sorry, I use that cliche a lot, but I think it's a really good one. You're like Andrew. You're like Hits. If we had a problem with you repeating yourselves, why don't you quote Seth Godin again? We would not be listening to TEM. Anyway, this quote's a real needle mover for all of you. People who enjoy people who have podcasts about Seth Godin. Anyway, I learned the new information. I then have to work on unlearning old information. Anything that is, as I was saying, until I interrupted myself, if this new information is really going to move the needle, then it's not going to be just like flicking a switch and unlearning the other, the previous information. That's really important. And then the third step is that I have to relearn and apply the new information that I encountered, which started the entire process. So it's like this 3-step process, but this quote from Gloria Steinem is a good reminder for me that the hardest part of this process, at least for me, is the unlearning part. But without that, change does not happen. As I was going to say a wise man, no, as a wise ass tuba player likes to say, that your attention is your most valuable commodity. Anyway, I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate your patience this spring, which has been a little chaotic in a not good way for me. And now it's summer, and summer is chaotic, mainly in a good way. I'm solo parenting all week this week while my wife is Talk about constant learners. My wife is a nationally renowned badass conductor and a middle school band director. Like absolute, like top tier. And she flew all the way to California to go and put herself under the bright lights of a conducting symposium. And she has gotten out of her comfort zone this week. And yeah, she's a real inspiration because she absolutely is good enough now, like technically and with the soft skills, and has enough notoriety that she really doesn't need to improve anymore, and she could just coast for the rest of her career and still get invited to guest conduct and still get invited to judge into like more opportunities than she would want. She's constantly pushing forward, unlearning old information, acquiring, and then really implementing new information. So, anyway, be like my wife. I'm talking to myself at this point. So the good news is she's never going to hear this, so she's not going to be able to hold over me that I was telling all of you that I need to be more like her. She'll never hear this. Thank you very much for listening, and that is going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.